I know that voice.
Yeah, it sounds very familiar.
It does sound familiar. It sounds like one of the three birthday boys. Hi, I'm Dan Schinder.
And I'm Steven Schinder.
And this is Nog. We're celebrating some birthdays today. That's Trevor Horn, of course. And we got two other birthdays we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Trevor last, right, Steve?
Yeah. We're going to talk about... Well, yesterday, as of when we're recording this, it's July 15th. Yesterday was Igor Khoroshev's birthday, and today is Peter Banks and Trevor Horn's birthday. So we'll be going Igor, then Peter, then Trevor. So, yeah.
No, it's Yes.
Right. Yeah.
What if there's a cover band called Yeah?
Maybe there is. I don't know.
Yeah.
I saw that there's a cover band called And You, and Yes. So they're like in Europe or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool. So, Igor Khorochev, let's first start out by saying we know he's not everybody's favorite member, but we still want to acknowledge his birthday. I personally think he is on some great Yes music. We'll get to that. So, if we can put him aside as far as the only member that really has a blemish on the record of being in Yes. And that's about 30 people, not counting Roger Dean, Steve, and myself.
Controversy type thing, yeah.
Yeah, but that aside, I am a fan of Open Your Eyes. I met Igor on that tour, and I love The Ladder. I'm not familiar with anything else he's done outside of that, but Steve, what's your take on him musically?
Yeah, well, on Open Your Eyes, he's only on 3 tracks, which are New State of Mind, No Way We Can Lose, and Fortune Seller. And I don't know about you, but when I think of those tracks, the keyboards aren't really the first thing that come to mind for me.
That's true. I think when I think of Open Your Eyes, I think of the tour more as it relates to Igor. Right. And the tour was great. That's the first time they pulled the Revealing Science of God out of their butts in a long time. So when that song started, anyone that wasn't on that record, which was Billy and Igor, it was like, okay, how's this going to go? Especially the keyboards, right? So to me, that was like okay, he passes, because they pulled that out and I thought that he did a great job.
Yeah, I do think the keyboard sound does stand out more on The Ladder. Like, for me, the ones that stand out are... Well, why don't you go first, since I want to see if we have, like, the same answers.
Okay, so he was more of a contributor on The Ladder. I also want to say, just dialing back a moment, America. He was so good that on the tour. He played America really super well. The piano work was outstanding. But yeah, going back to The Ladder, I personally love that album. I think Bruce did an awesome job of producing it. The fact that he passed away while they were in the final mix stage, I believe it was, it had to have been hard. But a great album covered by Roger Dean. And yeah, the music is outstanding and the tour was great too. I love his playing on that. Everybody's.
Yeah, I think the ones that come to mind for me first when it comes to keyboards, it's probably New Language. Just the way it begins with the like that type of thing. I also think of that organ sound part in Homeworld. I think Finally also has like some prominent.
Oh, I love that song. Well. Yeah, but then there's Lightning Strikes, and there's what song is that? Starts out with the sequencer on the keyboards. Do 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 do.
It's not New Language.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Okay, that confused me.
Yeah, sorry, me too. Just that was a test. You all passed. Great job. There's a lot of good keyboard stuff on that album, and again, I love the album as a whole.
Yeah, it's one of those albums where I think fans of it would say it's their favorite since Going for the One, which we covered recently, and
Right.
I think today's like the possibly the date it came out in the US back in the day. So, Going for the One, the GFTO album, not to be confused with GTFO, which means something else, but yeah. So the latter does rank highly among the later Yes albums, I would say, like the post classic era albums, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and they played Awaken on that tour as well, so he held up in that.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like with the musicians, like it's one of those things where depending on who it is and depending on like the person, like who you are or whatever, like sometimes it'll be easier to think more about the music than like the person and their actions. Your mileage will vary on that. But in terms of the music, like there's definitely musical talent there. Like I do acknowledge that. Yeah. And like some people, I've heard some people say that maybe, if things had gone well, maybe he could have continued longer. But then again, like we also heard that, the vibes were like, even before all that stuff, were that the band wanted to get Rick back eventually. So like, who knows, like,
yeah,
what could have happened. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, chime in if you have a favorite work by Igor, with Yes or otherwise. We'd love to know. And anything else on Igor, Steve, or you want to move on to Pete?
Yeah, there's like not much else I'm familiar with for Igor. I know he played on a couple tracks for an ELP tribute album in like '99.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I guess if we are committed to doing the first solo album since joining Yes for everyone, then I suppose we'd get to Piano Works at some point later in the year. I guess we'll see about that.
We might we might want to take a poll and see if anyone will watch and listen to the episode.
Right, yeah, that's just something we'll consider, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Moving on. Peter Banks, not only founding member, not only the first guitar player, but the man who came up with the epic name for the band. It was going to be called Harvey Goldstein and the Bagel Slingers, but they went with Yes.
Yes, very succinct name. Yeah, I think John wanted Life and Chris wanted World. They're kind of more generic, but Yes just fits with it so well. And you get the feeling that he probably would have wanted more like improvisation type of stuff, which is why he probably preferred doing stuff like Flash, Empire, Harmony and Diversity. And one of these is actually a bit of news I'll bring up if you give me a sec. But first, like, what are your overall thoughts on like Peter before I go into that?
Well, I agree with something Bill Bruford said when we interviewed him. And touching on Peter was a very rhythmic player. He was also very, very animated and extremely focused on stage. Like he was really, really in it. And I think that had a lot of inspiration and motivation on Bill's playing, it seemed to be, as he talked about Peter.
Yeah, definitely. Because in some of those old clips, you do see the energy from him and like the other members, and just like in those early days, it's like they're having a great time.
Yeah, and he was an innovator, absolutely an innovator. Those very, very early days, the formidable days of progressive rock, where not everything was 12-bar blues based, let alone blues based. He absolutely was stepping outside those lines, and there's glimpses of similarities certainly between him and certain aspects of Steve Howe's playing, especially early Steve Howe, where there was a lot of staccato playing. Those are like, really short, sharp notes, and a lot of, brushing on the strings with having them muted, a lot of stuff like that, kind of like you hear at the beginning of Siberian Khatru. So there's some similarities that kind of make sense when you look at those aspects and Steve coming in as the replacement. And then what Steve did to embellish on the songs that they moved forward that Peter played on, I think are no less than even a greater tribute and acknowledgement to Peter's contributions.
Yeah, and like earlier this year, we talked about his first solo album, Two Sides of Peter Banks, and there was a bit on there that kind of reminded us of Roundabout, so that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, very much so. Do you have a favorite work by Peter with Yes?
It would probably be either Survival or Astral Traveler. Possibly. Like if I'm thinking of his playing, like Astral Traveler has like great stuff from him.
Wow, I was thinking Wondrous Stories and Sound Chaser.
Wow.
Just kidding. No, I love those. Absolutely. I love No Opportunity Necessary. I love the playing on that. I think that in some ways that laid the groundwork for Yours Is No Disgrace in a way. I don't know why that's always been sort of a, no pun intended, a parallel sort of composition to me. There's something about those two that there's the link between that one Yes lineup and the other less Yes lineup. And those two songs kind of seem to intertangle a little bit. I love that. But Astral Traveler as well is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chime in, folks. Let us know, folks. Peter Banks, what's your favorite? Sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Yours Is No Disgrace is a song where they love to throw in like their own bits and sometimes improvise with like solos and stuff. But
yeah,
I guess I'll get to the news now. So,
okay.
I first found out about this from an article on bravewords.com, and there's also a YouTube trailer for this. So this is Flash in the USA, live recordings 1972 to 73, and this is 3 CD box sets. So according to this article, it says available on September 9th, restored live recordings from 1970s classic prog rock group Flash, featuring ex-Yes guitarist Peter Banks, 22 tracks from 7 shows across 3 discs.
Wow.
A majority of them previously unavailable. So that's a neat thing there. Like when these things come out, I love when most of it is like newly released, like stuff that hadn't been heard before.
Yeah. And it looks like there's some great packaging there too. We've got it up and it looks like there's a booklet. The CD box actually folds out into a 3-panel, I don't know, I guess that's a gateway. But the booklet, I'd love to see those pictures. And the thing is, Steve, why couldn't this come out when he was alive? Given his legacy is quite pivotal. Would there be a Yes without Peter Banks? If that one of 5 components wasn't there back then, would the other 4 have gotten together? That whole thing. We don't know. We're only guessing, hypothesizing parallel universe actions, but it's a shame that couldn't come out while he was alive. But at the same time, 50 years later, for the acknowledgement is really cool, because now I would want to get that, because now we know what was he doing during the Yes songs sort of period, right? And then moving towards Tales from Topographic Oceans. So I'd like to kind of hear that stuff side by side, and to me that's always fun to do. It gives it all a whole different context, but for it to come out 50 years later, wow.
Yeah, and the bassist Ray Bennett is quoted, like he talks about how whatever could be done with the audio was done, but some of it might sound a little like maybe not quite as top form and crisp, but it's still like a nice record of what things were at the time. And watching the trailer, I did get that vintage sense, so to speak, and it's listenable, I'd say. And yeah, I'd be down to listen to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I really don't know anything about the other players or the music of the band, so I want to dive down that rabbit hole for sure. How about you folks? Are you familiar with it? let us know.
Yeah, and this is coming from Think Like a Key Music. So I'll just go ahead and copy and paste that link into the comments, and people can decide where they want to pre-order it from.
Cool.
Yeah. So then, with that, should we move on to Trevor Horn?
Sure. Trevor Horn's birthday as well. Interesting thing about Trevor, if I may, is, back in 1980, when things fell apart with Yes in Paris recording, and John and Rick, just sort of were not feeling it. And then Alan broke his ankle roller skating with Richard Branson. So that kind of just put a period at the end of everything for a while. And then for them to come back with Jeff Downs and Trevor Horn from the Buggles, new Clash of the Titans, New Wave was just pretty much being born and popularized. It's the first year of a new decade, the 80s. There's some new technology coming out. And they got these two pop / punk / new wave / glam rock / real nerdy, dorky lead vocalists replacing. It's like, what is going on here? Well, if we had our crystal ball, what was going on there was Yes was very unknowingly bringing on a man who is credited for creating the music of the 80s, basically. Not just stylistically, but production-wise. I mean, what he became is truly remarkable. And if you skim the stone across his universe of existence, the fact that that stone landed on Yes for a brief moment, I think is really cool, actually.
Yeah, and in preparation for talking about, we watched the video we found on YouTube, Trevor Horn, the art of record production, but I also listened to some of the stuff he's well known for producing, which I think out of all the Yes related stuff we've gone through, I think this maybe branch out even further than I'm used to branching out. Like, it was like less familiar type of music to me than I'm used to.
Yeah, definitely.
So what do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about like the YouTube videos or the?
Yeah, let's talk about that. I watched it 3 or 4 times. I found it.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I found it so interesting, and I actually learned so much that I wish. And maybe that news did come out way back then, the way he literally invented what became the drum machine, by assigning notes in a rhythm, in a loop pattern on 2-inch tape. He was literally programming drums before you could program drums on a device. Maybe that stuff info came out back then, but there was no internet and all of that. Maybe it was on one British magazine about recording that I didn't know about or something, but I learned so much. And when he cited, I hope I'm remembering the gentleman's name properly, Stephen, was it Lipkin? The other producer that he mentioned? I have it right here, actually. I don't want to spend too much time looking, but it was... Sorry, I don't remember at the moment. Watch it. Steve's going to put the link in there. Watch this, folks, because what this other gentleman really identified that changed how things were done by Trevor was, he says that everyone was blowing it by assigning EQ as they recorded, but then it was forever encapsulated on digital, and it just wasn't transferring the same way. So this guy was saying, record everything flat, and put the EQ in the monitors, get it just right, and then do it in the mix. And in a lot of ways, that changed recording. And I think what Trevor did, if you look at albums like Frankie Goes to Hollywood, ABC, the stuff he did with Grace Jones, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I don't know if there's been a more indelible music revolution by one person than what Trevor did for the 80s, because what Trevor did for the 80s technologically and the way he produced that got carried forward even to the way things are done now. And if you watch this video and another one where it breaks down the Yes 90125 and reimagining that, it's pretty educational from a recording, engineering, producing, and mastering standpoint. And I love how he says that engineering and producing are two completely different things. Producing music is what directing a TV show or movies is. The director of visual and the producer of audio are kind of the same role, actually. The director is the one who makes it look the way it ends up looking, and the music producer is the one who makes it end up sounding the way it sounds. And I love the fact that he didn't want to work with big, famous, rich bands. He wanted to work with up and coming and help their vision, come through and be realized the way they did it. And if you listen, like I've been listening to music, researching for this or gearing up for it, that I wouldn't be caught dead listening to it when that music came out, because at the time I was in a snobby prog rock band called Opus One out of LA.
Well, that is a snobby name.
it is. It wasn't my idea. But now I'm much more mature in age, mileage, and wisdom. And I love music like Tears for Fears. I've always liked Grace Jones, but listening to the Frankie Goes to Hollywood stuff, like I've got 4 tabs up on Trevor, and one of them I simply YouTube searched produced by Trevor Horn, and there's a list of there's this one playlist of 233 tracks from 1979 to 2020. Yeah, so I started falling down that rabbit hole, and he talks about working with Grace Jones. He talks about the whole Frankie Goes to Hollywood thing. Welcome to the Pleasure Dome is amazing. Relax, I remember when that came out. Hated it, love it now.
Yeah, that is one of those songs where I can understand why someone would hate it and why someone would love it.
Well, especially, I was immersed in Frank Zappa, Gentle Giant, Genesis, Old Yes, Peter Gabriel, and a lot of those people probably loved that stuff when it came out. But back in those days and where I was as a person and a musician, my horizons up here weren't open wide enough to learn from stuff way outside my lane. I since have learned that, and I preach that all the time to musicians, the same way you probably do to writers, to not just follow what you write, the genre you write, but reach out and pull from here and there. But the list is amazing. Seal, he worked with Grace Jones, worked with Seal.
I listened to some Seal in preparation for this. Yeah.
Art of Noise, Propaganda, Tattoo, just Leanne Rimes. It goes on and on. Simple Minds, it goes on and on. It's all great stuff. Even if you don't like it, if you have an ear for production, there's no way you would not. I think most people would say, "Oh, I don't like the production. It's too bassy, or it's not too anything if not too good." It's really neat what he learned in the beginning of the 80s, and just he's the guy that not many people can be identified with an entire decade, of doing anything. Medical, sculpting, recreation, travel, fooding, whatever. What's your take on what he's done? And when's he ever going to amount to anything is the big question.
Right. So if I may, I'm just going to say something about a few of these things that I listened to.
Okay.
So I think the first thing that he produced that wasn't Buggles related, or that wasn't like under the Buggles name, because I don't know if this was made before or after Adventures in Modern Recording, but this is the Dollar album, which is the third and final album by the pop group Dollar. And the first track of this, Mirror Mirror, sounds very Buggles. And I look at the writing credits, it's like, oh, okay, it's written by Trevor Horn and Bruce Woolley. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like he's co-written a couple of these songs, but as the album progresses, it feels very much like those types of 80s pop albums where it's comfort music, like you listen to it and it's like, yeah, everything's gonna be all right, type of feel good music. So
On that
that
note, I just want to say on that note, you bring up a great point because I say when the 80s music was coming out, it just didn't resonate with me. The B-52s is one of those bands. I didn't get it. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want any part of it. The older me, I love the B-52s. That's my number one go-to first travel CD that gets put on in the carousel is the best of the B-52s. It's just fun. And you just said that lighthearted and just, the good spirited. It's fun stuff. And I guess I wasn't fucking fun back then or something. I don't know.
Yeah, may you hated fun things back then, like how I hate Thor: Love and Thunder right now, I guess.
Burn.
Yeah.
How long have you been waiting to figure out a way to slip that in today?
I wasn't planning
since
to.
the first
but
20 minutes of the movie.
I was not planning to, but
Okay.
just that analogy, it was like I saw the opportunity and went for it. But around this time, Trevor also produced the ABC album, The Lexicon
Yeah.
of Love, from 1982.
Wasn't
I guess
that
you
the
could-
first number one outside the Buggles, if I remember right?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me just look at that real quick. But it definitely has the right title for this album because it has like a bunch of romance songs. Open Your Eyes had like 4 love songs in a row, but this like surpasses that, I guess. So Lexicon of Love makes sense. And yeah, it reached number 1 in the UK albums chart. And it was during these sessions that he got a Lindrum drum machine and assembled a team that would characterize and define the sound of much of this work in the 80s. So
By the way,
yeah.
I remember the Lynn drum when it came out. It was a thing about if you're sitting in front of it, this wide, the short part in front was this tall, and the back was that tall. So it's on a slant, and it had all these square buttons that you'd assign sounds to, and you literally had to program a rhythm. And it was named after the George Lynn, the gentleman who invented it. His last name was Lynn, and that was the very first programmable drum machine. But again, if you watch that video that Steve mentioned, Trevor talks about basically inventing the drum machine by programming sounds onto 2-inch tape and looping it. It's quite extraordinary to have that vision. And for the record company to give him basically carte blanche, his own label pretty much, Island Records, and then go work with these young artists no one's ever heard of. And look what he did.
Yeah, but I gotta say, The Lexicon of Love is an album I'm not sure I would have listened to from start to finish if it wasn't for this episode.
Ah.
The production sounds top notch, but in terms of like the content itself, like I feel like some of the lyrics like on Tears Are Not Enough, it's kind of really straightforward, like not as wordy. So you kind of have to rely on the delivery of the words and the music around it, which is a smart way to do it. But I do like the use of trumpets on some of these songs.
Yeah.
Like there's used on one of these, The Look of Love Part 4, and that's a song I wish was like much longer. It was only 1 minute, but this is of the new wave, synth pop, and sophistopop genres. Apparently, I didn't even know that last one.
Sophistopop.
Yeah, but that reminds me, in that Art of Record production video, one thing that Trevor said that really stood out to me was how he said it's okay if people write lyrics set to a beat that they make. And I mean, that's how I've written lyrics. Sort of like I'll listen to a song and sort of write my own lyrics to the beat of that song, even though if I want to turn the lyrics into a song, I wouldn't be able to use that beat because, copyright reasons. But Trevor went on to say he much prefers, like, to him, it's more interesting to just write the lyrics first and have the music conform around that so that the lyrics aren't conforming to the music. It doesn't shorten the phrase, like it gives you more freedom to write more words, I guess. And I thought that was very fascinating the way
Yeah.
he put that.
Indeed.
And yeah, and so one of the songs on the Lexicon of Love is also the title of the John Anderson song, and it is "Show Me." And wouldn't you?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and wouldn't you believe it? There's also a song titled "Show Me" on Seal's first album.
That's right. That's right. And they're not the same song.
Right, they're like totally different songs. Yeah. And weirdly, Seal's first two albums are both titled Seal. Some people call the second one Seal 2 to avoid confusion.
That's odd for them to call it that.
Yeah, but I think I'd be more likely to revisit some of this Seal stuff than that Lexicon of Love album. Some of it kind of reminds me of Peter Gabriel stuff, which like maybe there are like some similar like cultural influences perhaps. And the second Seal album in particular, you know, the first one is listed as soul, R&B, and electro, but the second one had parts that sounded proggy to me. You know, there's a song called "Don't Cry," not to be confused with the Asia song. But I looked at the genre for the second one, and wouldn't you believe that one of the subgenres for it is progressive soul. Yeah, it's got like some neat orchestration stuff that reminded me of prog, and maybe some guitar stuff as well. And
interesting.
This was also a funny experience because when I got to "Kiss from a Rose," I thought to myself, wait a minute, I've heard this song in an episode of Community when they're doing karaoke. That's a
you're wearing the shirt.
Greendale Community College that you got me a while ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, the production is top notch. You can hear like what's being done, and like Trevor has a good ear for this.
Oh, amazing
sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, just going back to the 80s, one of the bands he worked in and with, I guess, was The Art of Noise, and
that's right.
That's something else altogether. It's very avant-garde and really using noises as music. It's kind of like taking the sound effects from Owner of a Lonely Heart and using that as like a huge song pieces.
Exactly, to construct it.
Yeah, so I want to dive into more of The Art of Noise because I've enjoyed what I've listened to from that.
Yeah, you'll have to check this link out with all these songs. It's really interesting how much he's done.
Yeah, and there's also that video, which is, I guess, related to that other one we talked about, where like both of these are related to Trevor Horn Reimagines the 1980s, which is an orchestral thing he did a few years back, like reimagining some 80s songs, some of which he didn't work on, weirdly enough, apparently. But the other video that I watched was basically him breaking down Owner of a Lonely Heart, and you hear like the different tracks on it in isolation, and the whole part, I think that's the one he said is like 6 tracks at once, which is kind of funny to think about.
Yeah. I remember at that time being at, in America, the largest music chain store is called Guitar Center. And I remember being at the old Sherman Oaks Guitar Center, the small one, and someone showing me the keyboard, which was called the emulator. And they explained that that's the keyboard that the part was recorded, that played on. And the is a acoustic guitar arpeggio, but it was processed and put on a floppy disk and played on the emulator, from what they said. And the emulator had a large floppy disk slot in it, and it was like so futuristic back then. If I saw that now, I'd think it was Fred Flintstones or something. You know, it's all relative. So this is going back, well, when 90125 came out, around that time, 84, 85?
80, yeah, it came out toward the end of 83.
Yeah.
But before I forget, one of the Art of Noise songs that I listened to was titled Close, and in parentheses it says "to the edit," so you know, a little reference to Close to the Edge,
Yeah.
which is pretty funny. So yeah, like he's got an extensive production portfolio. It's really impressive, and like I said, this got me to listen to stuff I feel was further out of what I tend to reach. And
Yeah, it all is for me,
research.
almost.
Yeah.
You know, I was familiar with Seal, familiar with Grace Slick, knew a lot of the names of the other bands, but never really listened to them. Now I fell down this rabbit hole. Like I said, I got 4 tabs open that are all Trevor Horn related. But let's talk about his work with Yes in 2 ways. Let's talk about his work on Drama, and let's talk about his work producing 90125. And fans, please go ahead and chime in if you're watching or listening on a platform where you can comment. Let's start with Drama. What was your context for that album coming out? Because mine was at the time it came out, and it was, you know, a year after the Tormato tour, the second leg. So it was total weirdness, not having a clue what to expect. When in your Yes listening timeline did you hear Drama, and what'd you think?
So last time I mentioned how I got Relayer and going for the one for my 9th birthday in late 2003. So I guess sometime in 2004.
Because I vowed to bring you up right, but go on.
Yeah, I think sometime in 2004 you might have you certainly played the cassette that you had of Drama, and so that got me sort of introduced me to what the material was. Like, I'd watched the Yes Years documentary when I was younger, and there was that little bit with excerpts of the Into the Lens and Tempest Fugit or Fugit, however you pronounce it, videos. So I'd heard those, but I guess when watching that documentary when I was little, I wasn't really cognizant of the context of like, oh, this is someone who replaced John for a little while. Like, I probably wasn't even aware that John got replaced or whatever.
Yeah.
And just thought it was just maybe I just thought it was just 2 guys like working with the. I don't know. But listening to Drama, like that cassette tape that you played, I remember thinking, oh, he does kind of sound like John on this, but you can tell that it's not. And
Sure.
I remember enjoying the music, and over time it's like grown even more on me. And, you know, Drama has gotten its own renaissance like since 2008 in the live setting.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a favorite track?
Machine Messiah, like, no question.
But I was going to add, as it relates to Trevor singing, is it still Machine Messiah?
It might still be, but I'd like to add that I have a soft spot for Run Through the Light. You know, I asked my love to give me shelter. Like, I just love how that sounds for some reason.
It does feature his voice in an upfront way, and he's playing bass on it, and Chris is playing piano.
Right.
Did you remember that? Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, featuring his voice, I was gonna say Tempest Fugit because of the pacing of it, and that's so much to keep up with. But I agree that Run Through the Light really shows off what he's able to do with his voice.
Yeah,
in a broader way.
Yeah, and while we're on Drama, I just remembered the little excerpts that I heard in that Owner of Lonely Heart video where he played the reworked orchestral version of it. It sounded very much like White Car in a way, like how they did that on the Drama.
Oh,
album.
Interesting.
So,
yeah.
Okay,
so go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do you want to move on to 90125?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
What's your favorite song that he sings on that?
I know he does backing vocals on Owner of Lonely Heart, at least. I don't know off the top of my head if he does that elsewhere as well.
I don't think so. And I was kidding, meaning lead vocals.
Yeah, but, I know. Okay. But
so what? Well, I'll give my thoughts on his production work on that, because I have 2 different ends of the spectrum. the work he did, and this is a given, this is almost a platitude to say this, but the work he did with Owner of a Lonely Heart really has every infusion of the 80s music up to that point at that time, and took with it, the 80s took with it some things from that song. You know, it really was a trend-setting song as far as what 80s music and production was going to sound like. So you take that, and then you move over to the other spin of that arc, other side of that arc with Hearts. And that's a totally different, you could put those side by side and almost say they're two different producers, which I think is a huge compliment. Hearts is a beautiful song, and it's big, it's wide, it's open, it's fat, it's arena rock in a lot of ways, and it's the same guy that produced it. You know, I think that says a lot.
Yeah, and I think Owner of a Lonely Heart was almost not on the album. You know, he listened to Trevor Rabin's demo of it, which, like, one of his demos of it at least feels more straight ahead rock and roll type of thing, and they kind of tried to inject that in the live setting at times, whereas on the album it feels more subdued, like, you know, kind of restrained, but you still have all these weird sound effects and stuff. So I feel like Trevor Horn, like, he really pushed for that song to be on the album, and he did what he did with it, and it became a huge hit.
And he said when he first heard Trevor's draft, he knew it was a hit. He knew right away. And I wonder how much he heard in his head that we hear now on the album. Like, did he have that forethought? Did that take a lot of massaging and development? I'd love to ask him that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting getting into his head and, like, knowing, like, how much of it did he work out of how it should sound, that type of thing. It's interesting.
Yeah. We should have him on. We'll reach out. Trevor, if you're watching, we'd love to have you on. We'll reach out.
Yeah, I think he's still touring with the Dire Straits Legacy. I think they have, like, East Coast dates coming up in August. So, but yeah, it'd be cool to talk to him about production and just making music and stuff.
Yeah.
So do you have anything else to say about any of these members? There are a couple other tangentially yes-related people I wanted to give shout-outs to since their birthdays were recent.
Go ahead and do that. I think I've spilled out pretty much everything I had to say about the three of them for now, yeah.
Okay, so one of them, Dave Kersner, his birthday was on July 10th.
Hey, Dave.
He's worked with... he's part of Arc of Life, which a few Yes members are in. And
Sound of Contact with Simon Collins, Phil Collins' older son.
Yes, love Sound of Contact.
Yeah.
And he has had at least Billy Sherwood on his new upcoming album, The Traveler, which looks like the release date for that is now going to be in August. It might be August 15th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and the wonderful, beautiful, great singer Durga McBroom as well.
Yeah,
from Pink Floyd. Yeah,
amazing. He says, okay, I'm looking at it now. He says the standard edition comes out July 29th. You can pre-order it today, and you can, like, go to his Bandcamp. I'll put these links in the comments and in the podcast description. But he also put out a video for one of the songs, A Time in Your Mind, and you can see Billy Sherwood performing in that as well.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that whole thing and seeing what it's like.
Dave was recently on the Cruise to the Edge with Billy and Durga playing with him.
Yeah.
I remember Billy saying it was great to go on a Cruise to the Edge excursion and show where all he had to do was show up and play. Like, he didn't have to, it wasn't a yes thing, you know?
Yeah, he was the only Yes member who made it.
And he said Dave was a real, like, work master, and he said he couldn't wait to get him on his album to get him back. Taskmaster is what I meant, yeah.
Yeah, and Billy also mentioned that the second Arc of Life album, when we interviewed Billy, that it might be more proggy, if I remember correctly.
Which would be great, because you kind of almost expect it, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, so happy birthday to Dave Kersner. And the other one, which you and I have talked about because we reshared of the Magnification episode from last year.
Bob Seska.
Yeah, his birthday was on the 12th, and he did the artwork for the Magnification album, which, even though it's not Roger Dean, we've talked about it before, it still somehow fits the music and even feels like it connects to John Anderson's stuff with like how he handled like the digital like triangle and
planets and stuff too. Yeah, that's my favorite non-Roger Dean Yes album.
Yeah,
it's a great album cover. I mean, the cover, yeah, it's a great album cover. It's a great album too.
Yeah. In a way, like it kind of feels like a modernization of Fragile now that I think about it, because space and stuff.
Yeah, we've seen a couple other related things like that.
Yeah. All right, so I guess that's all I had to say. Did you have anything else? I think we might be lagging a bit, so we might have to like
We'll play out some music. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think last time when we clicked end live, it might have ended like at the point where it was still kind of behind. I think that might be what happened.
So we'll go ahead and give this to Trevor. Here we go. Thanks, everybody.